Okay, so we will start now. I'm opening this session. My name's Pete Wrobel. I am the a founding director of Science Business, and I'm really pleased to be moderating this session. But before I start and introduce people, just to let everybody know that this session is being recorded and is available for quotation by anybody. So it's not a private session. It's all on the record, which I hope is okay. So if you don't want your face being recorded, you'll have to turn your video off. And we are discussing pandemic preparedness for the future in general in health. And we do so against a background of a quite dramatic 6 months, 7 months that we've all been going through. So I'm really pleased to be joined here by Pierre Meulien from the IMI, the Innovative Medicines Initiative of the EU. Our advertised speaker, Irene Norstedt, is unfortunately unable to be here, but we have a very able replacement from DG Research, Pilar Aguar, who's head of the Health Innovation Unit at DG Research. And we also have James Eshelby, who is the lead at Pfizer globally for public-private partnerships. So, and also from the look of it, we have a very informed audience. So we should have a good discussion and hopefully come up with some ideas about what needs to be done for the future. So I'm going to, first of all, ask our three panelists to make a short presentation each, and then we will start discussion. You need to indicate via the chat if you wish to wish to ask a question, and then I will choose you because our technical person here will mute you until you are ready to speak. All right. So with that, I want to turn to you, Pierre. It's been a big test, hasn't it, for the IMI? Be thrust into this incredibly high-profile environment that research has had to operate in since the beginning of the year. How do you think you've done?
Thanks, Pete, for inviting us, and I'm happy to spend a couple of minutes talking a little bit about IMI and what we've done historically and what we're doing right now. So as people know, IMI represents a long-term investment and commitment from both partners, the European Commission on the public side and the European Federation for Pharmaceutical Industries and their associations on the private side. And this has created a platform where we can bring all the actors that are necessary to accelerate, in general, the R&D process. And of course, this means that we not only have great researchers and clinicians and industrialists in our projects, which are usually very large-scale projects, and we're lucky to have the resources to be able to do things at scale, which are very important, especially in pandemics. But also we are able to bring, regulators, patients, SMEs, HTA bodies, and so on, who are all real key actors in the whole process, and so we can get this end-to-end integration of the R&D process going. So in our model, we're able to fund with public money those actors who include the researchers in academia and the patient groups and regulators and so on, including SMEs. But we do not fund industry. So our industry partners contribute very valuable pieces of operational, not only financial, but very importantly, people from industry who understand regulators who understand clinical trial design, who understand industry processes, so that we can build the necessary competencies to do specific things. So like in every public-private partnership, we have to have value for the public side and a value to incentivize private industry to do things that they may not usually do, especially in collaboration with usually their competitors. And so we are in this pre-competitive space where we're able to do these things, as I say, at scale, with many industry partners at the table and all of the other actors. So no surprise then that we, and I'm always saying that IMI is not for everyone and not for everything, but for certain things it is in a sweet spot of collaborative partnership where we can actually get things done at scale and tackling some of the major issues. So no surprise that we do a lot in infectious disease, and within that we do an awful lot in antimicrobial resistance. We do a lot in things like that are very scientifically complex, like dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and other neuro diseases. These are really scientifically complex things where industry partners are willing to play together in the pre-competitive space. We also are very good at looking at gaps in infrastructures, like in pediatric clinical trials, like in some high-tech platforms, and so on and so forth. And of course, pandemics. And we've already done a lot of work in Ebola, as you know. Indeed, over the past 5 or 6 years, we've been able to co-fund with some of our industry partners some very large-scale projects, which have just recently given rise to one of the first Ebola vaccines to be authorized by the European Commission. So this is a huge success story, and that we'll be able to now devote a lot of the same platform technologies, a lot of the same know-how to COVID. Indeed, in the past, we can already repurpose certain things that have been developed in the IMI world, like the antimicrobial resistance clinical trial networks that have been built, both on the clinical trial, clinical research setting, and in the, very importantly, clinical laboratory settings. And these are hundreds of sites that have been networked together for AMR. And those can be repurposed for COVID and are being repurposed as we speak for COVID clinical assessments and testing and all the rest of it. We've also been lucky that we've invested in preparedness projects. There's one called ZAPI, which is actually a zoonosis project. This is a 6-year-old project now, but a bit of luck has been put into this, because at the time, of course, we didn't know COVID was coming along, but the group was choosing some of the zoonotic viruses that may well crop up now and again. One was Rift Valley fever, one was Schmallenberg virus, and one was, of course, a coronavirus called MERS, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome virus that jumped in 2003 from camels to humans. And so a lot of knowledge has been cropped from that project, and indeed humanized monoclonal antibody coming directly from that project is being further developed through European funding and so on, to see how that goes. So these are the kind of things that historically, and I'm going to close now, are there. We can mobilize these things at both a European and more global scale, and I think I'll be talking a little bit more about some of those things, because we have our own COVID call that was focused on diagnostics and therapeutics that we launched in March, and a lot of activities are flowing from that we might have a chance to come back to later on. Thanks.
So So I'm sort of getting the message here that it's, relatively unsexy terms like infrastructure, harmonization, networking, standards, things like that, that are absolutely crucial and transferable in the case of a pandemic. Is that right?
Indeed, Pete, and I think these are the important things that a public-private partnership can do. Once it's in a pre-competitive space, of course.
Yes.
And so that's why we're set up to do these kind of things. One of and it's a lot of it is on the horizontal piece that can go across the industry space, where there's real public value, because it's very difficult to incentivize people, as you know, to invest large amounts of money in antimicrobial resistance, for example, or diseases like Ebola, and now, of course, there's no hesitancy to fund a lot of science and R&D in COVID. But we do a lot in drug safety. That's a great topic for a public-private partnership, where there's a public need. The private sector is, of course, very interested in having drug safety profiles for their own products, and so these are win-win situations where we can play in those spaces quite successfully.
Thanks. Pilar, turning to you and the European Commission's point of view, how do you see your role now as the European Commission in terms of not only dealing with the current pandemic, which, as we all know, hasn't gone away, but also in terms of preparedness?
Thank you, Vic. First of all, let me, on behalf of Irene, apologize, because it has been something really unexpected that has, she can't be today with you, so she asked me to convey that message. But indeed, we have been very active in the research and innovation sphere arena. We started, I think that our first expression of interest, our first call for proposals was done in January already. So it was one of the first initiatives that the Commission took. But I want to come back perhaps to something that it has been mentioned by Pierre. We have the partnership, IMI, we're part of this partnership, but we do have a toolbox really with different type of instruments, different type of ways and initiatives that we can do research, we can facilitate research, we can finance research and bring together a number of different actors. And we have tried to do so through different initiatives. The call that was launched in IMI is one example. A number of expressions of interest have been done in the more classic research. We have brought together member states, which are a very important actor in the era versus corona, where we were working really side by side, networking, mobilizing the researchers, the community, but also informing each other of the different initiatives. And indeed, the infrastructures, networking, data sharing are critical elements, not only for COVID-19 fight, but for any given possible pandemic, because these are elements that are going to be at the heart of any given knowledge that we can share. Mm-hmm. So those are things that we have been doing. We have been also working closely with SMEs through a different type of initiative, the European Innovation Council, and those have been projects on over 150 million that are really dedicated to bring the innovation. They're really focusing on innovative, or the most innovative part of the research, and bringing together solutions to the market for the citizens, and that's also something that I wanted to share with you. And also the fact that beyond research grants, we have been also cooperating strongly with the European Investment Bank through an instrument that we call Innofin, which is most on other type of financial support, such as loans for companies. So as you see, we have done a number of different things in different spheres with different actors, because we believe that this needs to be the horizon, if I may use the term. It's very broad, and we need to have a concerted action in different things. I guess that it would be unfair not to mention the COVID-19 data platform, because this is one of the most successful elements of this strategy. And indeed, over 73,000 people have come together and share data on the research. And that was one of the very strong elements up front in our activities. The pressing need to research, to share data upfront was expressed in our calls, and the researchers were asked to immediately share and openly share this data. So anybody interested in this can share, from clinicians, more basic research, all type of elements are shared in this COVID-19 data platform. And this makes it really a very important instrument to understand the virus, to understand the pandemics, and to understand what needs to be done next. So in terms of also preparedness, I think that this is an excellent element. And with regards to the future, one thing that I would perhaps just mention is that, as you know, the Commission is a big institution, and we have colleagues working, of course, beyond research and innovation. We have colleagues working on preparedness in different corners or in different areas, on different services of the Commission, and a number of the important elements of and the priorities of this Commission, and the von der Leyen's Commission, are critically important for these preparedness in the future. So the pharma strategy will have, of course, to look into that. Also, the European health data space, which will allow us to share a number of data also for research. The program, the next proposed program, EU for Health, which will work not on the research area, but it will work more on the implementation area, on the deployment area, as well as a number of initiatives that have been proposed in the envelope of Horizon Europe, from the European Innovation Council and the European Research Council to the more classic research in the cluster health. And I would perhaps end up with mentioning a number of partnership, both public-public and public-private, that have been proposed and are being today are under consideration, so they're being discussed. In particular, the next proposed partnership on health, innovative health initiative. I would also like to mention the proposed partnership with the member states on the transformation of the health systems, because I think it is relevant also for preparedness and pandemic preparedness and health preparedness. And also, just to say that there are some reflections on a pandemic preparedness or a preparedness initiative that needs to be further discussed with the member states, because the elements are still under construction. But all in all, I think those are most of it. Those are the elements that I can bring to the table. And many of these issues are going to be further discussed in the upcoming Research and Innovation Days. Maybe it's also for you another forum to learn more about these initiatives. I'll stop at that.
Pilar, you're talking about your work with data and the COVID-19 data platform. Do you feel there's still quite a bit of work to do on standardization of data reporting, of case reporting? People have very different ways of talking about the data, the cases that they produce.
Yes, indeed. The data, it's the oil of the 21st century. But when we talk oil again, it's a commodity that can be traded in different forms and varieties. Standardization, it's important. GDPR compliance is important. Also, obviously, verification, if I may use the terminology, excuse me for the jargon, but verification of the data fair. That's, I think, one of the critical elements. It is obvious that today the European health data space is under construction, and those are elements that will be part and are part of the overall strategy and initiative, where we're working very, very close to member states. And I think that we all share the critical view on the importance of these matters.
Okay, well, we might come back to this later, but now I want to move on to James Eshelby from Pfizer. What's Pfizer getting out of this? You know, why are you involved, and do you plan to keep getting involved? If I can put it like that. You need to unmute yourself, James.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for the invite to yourself and Science Business. Indeed, we see a lot of advantages of getting involved in public-private partnerships, and IMI has been a great scheme that has allowed us to tackle many issues that we would not be able to, or not have the capacity to address on our own. So I think it's really been my honor in the last 3 years to be engaged on this, and it's been some of the most exciting and rewarding times that I've had. Just to echo some of the points that Pierre and Pilar have touched upon, why do we engage in these IMI consortia? And we really see that there is an opportunity to accelerate innovation, and particularly innovation change, ecosystem change. It's one of those areas where there's very, very complex issues, multifactorial challenges that we can't tackle within single parties, and actually often with multiple parties engaging together. It really requires multiple parties in sectors engaging with people outside of their zone. So bringing that, as Pierre and Pilar have already highlighted, the researchers, the industry, the agencies, the patient groups, all those different perspectives are highly critical to actually bringing solutions forward. And the scale and the term of these projects is obviously very significant. And that's one of the key features of this, is it's not short, nimble projects. These are the projects which are tackling those nuggety problems that we look at and think, how is that going to be resolved? Well, IMI provides a vehicle for doing that. Removing some of those roadblocks that we commonly see and are very important both to industry but also to the public. So how do we make sure that healthcare solutions reach patients, and we actually are able to remove some of the challenges towards that? Some of the other things that IMI projects deliver is real trust and veracity in the results, and I think it comes back to some of the commentary you were just asking Pilar about there in terms of that data that comes out and the evidence that comes out. I think IMI has an opportunity, and other public-private partnerships have opportunities to really think about the evidence base that is associated with the outcomes that come out, and how do we actually provide results that can be trusted, that have real veracity and validity to them. And it's something which we've seen a great benefit from working with the multi-sector. So it's not just industry coming with a position, it's actually something where we're seeing a challenge, and we're also wanting to work with how others see that challenge, and then actually validate that across many different lenses that we can bring together than that. The safe harbor with these collaborations, we're working obviously with competitors. There's pre-competitive, so these are challenges that we're not looking at specifically in terms of assets and products, except in areas where we're thinking of like antimicrobial resistance, where there's a particular incentivization challenge. But most of the projects are very, very focused on pre-competitive space to try and remove roadblocks. And that working with all these different partners is really important. So, just looking at the COVID-19 challenge, Pierre's highlighted how already some of those historical projects have come along and worked on areas and then repurposed and adapted themselves, because they are really well designed projects. They have really important infrastructures. They have really important methods of working and really important teams, and the networking that is enabled through this, and the really top quality researchers on all sides are brought together, and they can really then start to factor in how they've addressed some solutions in one situation and then adapt that to others. So Pierre highlighted the Anti-Microbe Resistance Clinical Trial Network. And we also see how that's also happening with harmonizing of clinical trial data, and also capturing the big data and real world data that's out there in other projects. So that's just tackling some of the existing projects and the value of those, and showing the importance of having these things already in play, even though they weren't specifically designed for this purpose, but they can be adapted. But then IMI also had the flexibility to come in and launch a call extremely rapidly. They have selected for funding 8 projects, and we're already starting to see some of those projects emerge. So, certainly working very closely with the IMI Care project, it was fabulous to see a project going so quickly with 37 partners and over 70 million euros of investment in that project. And it's already launched with an agreed work plan, budgeting, and everything else associated with that. Just imagine the logistics of getting 37 partners with very diverse viewpoints all coming together on a common goal. Very, very impressive what they managed to achieve. Coming back to the industry role in IMI, it's also important to reflect back what Pierre said about industry does not receive funding. We provide 2.5 million euros of in-kind contributions, and we provide expertise in translation, upscaling, and regulated environment. And we share a lot of data with all the partners across that. So that's really comes back to that scale element. So in summary, IMI has delivered radical collaborations. It's a powerful lever to address the European drivers, building strong and resilient ecosystems, faster and open innovation and translation, impact for patients and society. And we really see that the new successor scheme, we'd really like to see other sectors getting involved. That's something that we highly welcome. And we think that's really strong to benefit patients and society.
Sorry, James, when you say other sectors getting involved, what are you talking about specifically?
Medtech, diagnostics, digital devices. This is something that Irene touched upon. Sorry, not Irene, Pilar touched upon with the new Innovative Health Initiative. It's something in discussion, but we'd certainly welcome other sectors joining in a new scheme that would supersede IMI. So how do we bring those different perspectives? And I think that's also going to become ever more important to how do we deliver healthcare solutions in the future.
Yes, and we've just got a question in from Geraldine Canny. Can you please elaborate as to how MedTech will be more involved with IMI? That's a question for you and for Pierre and Pilar also to come into, because speaking from the point of view of an observer, a civilian in this fight against COVID, diagnostics has been a huge question mark, both reliability and availability. So what steps can or should be taken to involve diagnostics more in IMI and future plans? James.
So certainly we've been very supportive of engaging with other sectors within IMI. And I think that's something that we very much welcome, actually, that being memorialized in a new scheme. So diagnostics, I think it would be really important here for Pierre to comment more about the COVID response in particular. There's that's something we've seen as a very strong factor in that. Pierre, do you want to comment further?
Sure. So, I think in general, what we're looking at in the whole ecosystem is this technology convergence, between these different things, diagnostics, imaging, pharmaceuticals, digital. And so this lends itself to creating maybe something more inclusive for those other sectors. And the diagnostic piece is huge. We can't imagine having an AMR program without a rapid diagnostic arm, in the same way that for the COVID, we need much more work on rapid testing, the robustness of those tests, and so on and so forth. This is absolutely key. So I think that these things need to come together, and they need a vehicle, because some of these actors aren't used to working together. They're on very different business models. The digital business model is very different from the diagnostic and the pharmaceutical models. So we need some kind of unifying platform to do this.
Yeah, and to expand upon that, I mean, some of the projects that we've been looking at within IMI have been, there's been a huge swathe of projects looking at biomarkers. So how do we actually, use those biomarkers and actually help some of the diagnostics that could come out and actually become, more patient-facing in the marketplace as well. So that's something which, there's, a further translation, engage in these different sectors, spotting new opportunities. We all have our skills, our focus areas, but then how do you actually, make those connections across these different platforms and different players with different outlooks and different business models?
Indeed, that was something that was up front in the Commission proposal. We looked into what couldn't be done in setting up IMI2 for different reasons. And from the beginning, when we were working we have been working in this proposal for the Innovative Health Initiative, we put up front the need to work across different sectors, not that the frontiers between different products and different models are blurring a lot. And with regards of diagnostics, also maybe Pete to comment that a number of the projects that are already ongoing are focusing on diagnostics, not only in IMI, but also many of the projects that I cited with SMEs that are funded with other areas or other elements on Horizon 2020 that the European Innovation Council are specifically focused on that. And some of them are at the edge or have already reached the market, practically pre-market, I wouldn't like to say authorization, because not the correct term, but they have been already presented to the competent bodies in one of the member states at least to be basically ready for marketing. So there are initiatives, there are projects, there are a number of strategies that have been dealing with that too. Having said that, it is obvious that we can't improvise, and having diagnostics that have the right element, it's of course about correct diagnostics, meaning reliable diagnostics, no false positives, no false negatives. That's not something that you can improvise. That's something that needs to be really looked at in careful, and you can't bring the innovation. You can accelerate innovation, but you should not skip the safety issues, the safety concerns, and that's also true for other areas, not only for diagnostic. So it's about reliability and efficacy and safety. These things cannot be improvised, and we shouldn't neglect them.
I fully agree with you, Pilar, and I think to build on that point, I think the PPP offers you a great vehicle of ensuring that you have the right people looking at it, and bringing those different experiences, so you can do the right things for safety, for the reliability of the tests, but do that as quickly as you possibly can. It's not a single player trying to work this out. Now you're getting multiple people all aligned on a common mission. So we found that very powerful, is to have many different perspectives all bringing together and trying to bring their different viewpoints to doing that. That alignment often is extremely valuable.
Do you think, though, that standardization of case definitions, for example, is that going to be like a permanent job for decades and decades? Is it, or do you think you can sort of get to a point where it's good enough? Given it's a very diverse landscape, and it's not just diverse as between countries. It varies sometimes from hospital to hospital, certainly varies within countries. So how do you see that progressing?
Well, maybe I'll start, but obviously this is a huge challenge, especially in a very variable, heterogeneous disease like COVID, because different people have different systems, and even so having a common case, a definition of a case is really, really complex. But I think the important thing is, irrespective of whether that's possible or not, is this crosstalk and the availability of common platforms. So the platform, the data platform that Pilar mentioned for COVID-19, I think is a key. Because one of my main concerns, and something that we need to work a lot on, it's not only for COVID, but for many areas, is the sustainability of the work and the data and the databases and all the learnings that have been generated through these large-scale projects, and making sure that the dots are joined. And I think the European Union is a perfect vehicle through which to do it, given the European landscape. And so things like the COVID-19 database that could be replicated for other things, and to ensure the sustainability. And I think we've all struggled with sustainability issues, and I think this is absolutely key for going forward, and something that's not it's not a quick fix. It's something that we need to invest a lot in.
Good. I've got a Casper Garros from Philips wants to come here. I think on the medtech side and I think the diagnostic side. Can we let you in, Casper? Can you start talking?
Yes, of course. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I just wanted to answer this question as well by Geraldine on the medtech involvement. And I think James already talked about how collaboration could look like, and yourself also by saying that even, perspectives are different, even different from hospitals. And I just want to stress that in teaming up from the pharma side and medtech, we can really make a difference. Because I've noticed in PPP projects that the two sectors are hardly interacting with each other for different reasons. And we have developed a strategic research agenda already together. And we're now in the process of defining the first call texts for next year. And in that process, you see already how this cross-fertilization is working. And I just want to stress that with the new health PPP or IHI coming up, I'm convinced that it will definitely help to have a more effective way of collaborating with each other. That's just what I wanted to add to the previous speakers.
So Pete, can I just jump in there? So
yes, please do. Yeah.
Casper, fully agree with that, and just building upon that from a historical perspective, I think if we look back to the start of IMI1, the industry sector had a lot of trouble just within pharma actually working together. That was actually a major movement to actually get partners to actually agree on what was pre-competitive research and identify projects. Moving to where we are now, several years later, and actually the conversations across industry partners on what to do is a really vibrant and really exciting discussion about how do we break down those silos. And that's what I'm really looking forward to now, working with your sector and the diagnostic sector and other sectors. So, I think that it really bodes well for the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
Could I just bring in a new aspect here? And I'm mindful of the new mantra of Europe First. But when you talk about clinical trials, what appears to be happening with COVID is that by the time you're ready to have a clinical trial, you find yourself running after patients, a sufficient patient cohort, and that means actually going abroad, doesn't it? A lot of the time. So that kind of these kind of relationships, will they not have to be built internationally as well as within Europe?
Well, maybe I'll start again. Mm-hmm. So the answer, of course, is yes. I think this joining up of dots internationally is a key. And this is why the role of the WHO, the role of philanthropy like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust and others, there's a whole global coordination, which the Secretariat is actually funded through the European Commission, Glopidar, and these coordination bodies are going to be key for this type of pandemic management. So globalization and internationalization and connecting what's going on, it's by the way, it's easy to say and not easy to do, but this is essential. And so yes, because of the dynamic of the infection of the pandemic, at a certain time point, you will want to do phase 3 vaccine trials in Brazil or India or the US, depending on what's going on. And that can be anywhere. And as we've seen over the last 6 months, those dynamics change very quickly. So this is why the joining up of dots internationally are going to be absolutely key.
Indeed, maybe just to confirm what Pierre mentioned, and also the fact that research, the Horizon Europe, I mean, traditionally the European funded research is open to the world. Mm-hmm. So that's something that is embedded in our genes, if I may use the term. And we have been quite actively looking at the global perspective. That's very obvious. And we have also been very active supporting clinical trials in Europe also, because it's a matter of networking and organization. There's no the same value of having 20 small clinical trials here and there, rather than having, connecting the dots, connecting the researchers, and having a major or 2 majors or 3 major clinical trials. That's quite obvious. But we have been supporting these platform trials up front, and we have been networking quite intensively to get to make sure that these dots are connected up front. So that doesn't have to be Europe first or Europe only. It was never planned like this, and actually the Commission was very much playing a very leading role on the Global Pledge, for example. So just to mention that it is not, we're not stopping our look or our inside look in only Europe, but also going beyond that. So that's a commitment we have.
Indeed, and I think the whole area of interconnectivity of research, I mean, obviously, the outputs of projects has got to benefit Europe, but, that doesn't mean an exclusion from benefiting other areas. So that's, it's something that we need to make sure that what are the right projects to do? How do we connect these things? Healthcare is interconnected across the globe. There's no way of getting around that. Even when we look at our contributions into projects, a lot of my company's contribution into these projects is from affiliates outside of Europe, and we bring those into those projects for the benefit of the project. So right now we already engage very effectively with that. It's something that we'd like to see continue to bring in those contributions. But chasing the right things to be done to make sure that we are benefiting patients and society has got to be sort of the central mantra. And then, how do we actually move beyond that to say, okay, so what is the scheme and how does the structure and the flexibility enable those things? So it's got to be something that we really focus on capturing the value proposition, taking all the factors into account. But the global perspective is critical.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. One's very quick. When is the next IMI expected to start? Will it be included and will it be included in the health working program for 2021-22?
Yes. I guess Pierre can also probably say a word on that, but just very briefly to reply to Loredana, the initiative, the partnership is not included as such in the health working program 21-22. It cannot be, because if, as I say, this is all work in progress. So if this is to be a partnership as planned, it will have to follow a complete different path from the legislative point of view, and there will be an evolution and a development on this legislative piece, which is connected to, of course, but independent of the health working program or the work done on cluster health. So the work is in progress, but it is not within the health work program for 21-22. Pierre, I don't know if you want to say another additional word on that, but it will be a single out initiative, a single legal or a legal act on itself.
So yeah, I think Pilar, you said everything, and I think we just need to wait for the legislative process to go its way. But hopefully, it'll start in 2021. So that's the plan.
Now I know Tapani Pierre from Finland wants to come in on the health data issue. Tapani.
Hello. I left Brussels 2 years ago, and since then I have been working here in Finland with the Ministry of Health, and now also with the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra. And Pilar mentioned that the European Health Data Space is a key project, and indeed it is for all Commission departments. And therefore, DG Sante, my old DG, has launched a joint action of the member states, because it's very clear that when we want to create a European health data space, European level action is not enough. We need to bring the member states on board. And the planning for this new joint action is ongoing, and the plans for this joint action will include that the member states together, in coordination with the Commission, are coming up with ideas for legislation, about guidance, about data quality, infrastructures needed to implement the European health data space. But also the joint action will be also looking at the My Data and citizens' involvement, so that broad range of data from healthcare own data, so data held by healthcare, to the data held by citizens themselves. And when I was listening to this workshop, it was very useful, because it reminds me that when we are working on these different initiatives, we need to make sure that we have a linkages between each other, so that we are not building these new things in silos. So I will definitely take the message from this workshop to the joint action planning meeting tomorrow, and then remind that we definitely need to keep our eyes and ears on what is happening in other areas, like in IMI. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just a little question to you and also to our panelists. Do you think there's a role for a big role perhaps for AI in both in validating data sets, but also in getting consistent data out of a variety of inconsistent data sets?
As regards the joint action in this planning process, we haven't been discussing this, but it's an interesting idea. And of course, the artificial intelligence, it has been otherwise very much on the agenda, for example, by the German presidency.
Yes. Thanks. I'm sorry, I'm just checking. I've got a couple of messages. No, that's fine. We are nearing the end now. We've got another 10 minutes. And what I'd like to do is turn back to our panelists, maybe in reverse order, and say to you, later in the day, Richard Hudson will be talking to Monsieur Paquet about the next Horizon program. What kind of messages would you like him to put over to Monsieur Paquet. James, would you start us on this?
Okay, sure. So I think the evolution to the new innovative health initiative, or whatever name is ultimately given to it, where we have a multi-sectorial output, is extremely important. I really welcome the fact that we can continue to break down silos and improve healthcare. Just thinking about the pandemic response and where this could look like in years to come. If we are fast tracking and looking at some of the projects that we're doing in IMI, where we're doing projects like trials at home, or we're looking at harmonizing data, and how do we actually take that to the next evolution in the next public-private partnership scheme. So really thinking about that digital landscape, coming back to how do we collect data, how do we provide evidence, how do we actually communicate that data, how do we build public trust in the data. I think all of these elements are something which PPPs are really central to be able to help tackle these real issues that are common ones. And just thinking about it's not something which we see as a one size fits all, but how do we actually bring all these different players together, and we start to think it's not just about the pandemic, it's also about all the other healthcare solutions which are put on hold while we're dealing with the pandemic. So if we are able to keep things going in situations where we have to have social distancing and we have to put in place all the emergency measures, but we're actually stopping those impacts by incorporating infrastructures and technologies in play, hopefully that will help overall healthcare at the same time as addressing many things involved in the pandemic itself.
Thanks. And Pilar?
You're putting me in a very, very complicated spot. I don't want to. I don't want to. I can't tell what I should hear or what I would like to hear from him. But what I'm sure he will make the point that indeed the European research and innovation policies and the investments are essential to contribute, an essential contribution to transform Europe, to make it better prepared, to make it more resilient, and to the next disruptive event. I will not use the term pandemic. I'm entirely sure that he will mention that Horizon Europe has a very deep, very clear focus on impact on society, impact on the life of citizens, impact on the science. And this is done really with a complete new mindset, with a lot of co-design and co-creation within not only the Commission services, but also with virtually every stakeholder. We have been consulting with every possible stakeholder that was interested to share their views with us. And I think this has made a really open, transparent, very, very inclusive process, together with member states, together with the scientists, together with the European Parliament. So I think that we may be sure that the health research, or the EU health research, has taken all the issues on board and will really be providing with a lot of opportunities for us to be better prepared for the next pandemic.
Right. Do you think quite a lot has been said within this discussion about needing to bring medtech and pharma together? Do you think there are lessons there that need thinking about?
I think that one lesson learned, if I may dare to say so, is that all areas of research are needed. All areas of research are important and can contribute, and definitely contribute to be better prepared. So we have made a lot of, we have had a lot of activities, not only on the, if you want, more classical health research, but also improving the understanding on behavioral and socioeconomic aspects, including also, of course, diagnostics and use of digital to transform that, but also supporting research on manufacturing or upscaling or making rapidly manufacturing for this pandemic. So one thing that we have learned, I think, is indeed that every single area of research is relevant for fighting a pandemic. That one of the important issues is inclusiveness and to have these multi-stakeholders, multi-sectorial, multidisciplinary approaches. And that indeed data will be important, infrastructures will be important, but every single every single small detail, it's really crucial.
Right, and finally, to you, Pierre. What are the key messages coming out to you?
Well, I'm going to go back to the learnings that I've seen that we need to address from the PPP perspective, and I think one of them is this issue about sustainability. And we've been able to create these amazing groups with amazing data coming out. And we really need to ensure that we have all of the tools necessary to sustain those and make sure those learnings persist after the end of the program, after the end of the project, and so on. And I think this is a major challenge that we all need collectively to address. The second one is, we've already mentioned, more global connectivity, and I think that's, once again, it's easy to say and it's not easy to do, and we need to do more of it in a structured and productive manner. And the third thing is about flexibility. Everybody wants us to be more flexible, and I think it's a great thing. One framework program, lasts for 7 years. Ecosystems change over time, and it needs to be very adaptable to bring in new partners as even members of PPPs. And I know there's lots of discussion going on around that. It's also a double-edged sword because we can go certainly very rapidly for certain things, but don't forget that we are spending taxpayers' money, and so we cannot just get rid of bureaucracy, and we can't, and we of course are accountable to the European Court of Auditors to make sure that we're spending money wisely. So those things, I think we need to be sure that we have a correct balance. And I think, as James already mentioned, the other aspect of this flexibility is on the regulatory side. And yes, everybody wants a COVID vaccine now and new therapies now, but we have to listen very carefully to the regulators to ensure that we're doing things safely, that we do not cut corners, which then we're going to pay for later on. And this is one of the advantages of having the regulators and other bodies within these programs. These are crucial dialogues and discussions we need to have as projects are in real time, as projects are progressing, especially in this type of pandemic situation.
Thanks. Well, I think there's plenty to think about in everything that's been said. An hour has fairly zipped by, and it certainly held my attention, and from the look of the number of people here, it's held the audience's attention as well, which I'm really pleased about. So a very big thank you. One would like to give a round of applause, but of course that's not really possible. To our three speakers, to James Eshelby from Pfizer and Pilar Aguar, and thanks for stepping in at the very last moment. It's maybe it's both difficult and easy perhaps to step in at the very last moment. You don't have to spend a long time worrying about things. You just have to go for it. But
you get less stress.
But it's been really good and great to have you, Pierre, with your position and overall knowledge in the IMI. Thank you all very much. And please remember you can continue the discussion both, if you wish, with people from this workshop for the next 48 hours, actually, over the B2B platform, which is, where is the B2B platform? It should be somewhere. You should, it was up on the chat for everybody at some point. One moment. Sorry about this. I'm actually typing it now again into the sign in for the B2B. People who want to be doing that. So thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you.